It's your thing. Do what you want.
Hello out there and welcome to It's Your Thing. I'm Lisa Ellex, and each week I talk with a guest about their thing, about what they do and why they do it. This week I am very excited to be talking with minister, educator, and I would say healer, Reverend Ellyn Kravette. Welcome, Reverend.
Oh, thank you so much.
How are you today?
I'm fabulous today, and I'm so delighted to be here.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here. And I just said a whole bunch of titles. You carry a lot of titles, but I feel that they're all interwoven. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are two main themes, I think, that run through my life and everything I've done so far, because when you say it's your thing, I'm not sure yet what your thing is? What my thing is. I'm still thinking. As long as I'm breathing, I'm going to be thinking.
I think that's the way to do it. I feel the same. So what you said, there's two main themes.
Two main themes.
What is that?
One is that I've been gifted with being a conduit person. I'm not fabulous at anything. Well, I am fabulous at some things.
Yes, you are.
But I'm not. You know how some people are driven by one path?
Sure.
I'm I hear the music in so many different things, but I'm a conduit for people. And the other thing, or maybe they go together, is I think the theme of my life is about connecting to life. And when I was thinking about coming here today, I was thinking about, who I really am and what my path is. And we had coffee last week and started talking about this, this God writes straight with crooked lines kind of life that I've led. And I thought about the fact that I'm not a natural.
Why do you say that?
Well, I spent a great deal of my childhood being very depressed.
Really?
And watching people and not feeling a part of things, feeling like people didn't talk to me, they didn't talk about what I thought or what I felt. They were very busy with their lives. My father had died when I was 5 years old, and my mother in the 1940s was left with 2 children and a lifestyle that she could ill afford to live without a husband, and she was a dynamic, creative, brilliant person, but trying to hold everything together as a single parent, as I know most single parents out there know, is a very hard thing to do. It's hard enough to hold things together when you have a partner, but very difficult as a single parent, especially in the 40s when women were not recognized as being powerful breadwinners. And so there was a lot in my life of how we were going to be organized and taken care of, as most single women have a problem with trying to do everything by themselves. So I was constantly being organized and everything. Everything is as it should have been.
Right. We know that now, but you don't know that when you're going through it.
Exactly so. Exactly so. So I spent a lot of time feeling not a part of the mainstream and not fitting in. So that's what I mean when I say living for me, I wasn't a natural. I wasn't connected with people. I was on the outside more looking in. So when I was about 30 years old and waiting still for Prince Charming to come and find me and tell me who to be and give me a role, I realized one day in my bleakness that there was something that people knew that I had not learned, and it was time I got up. And, as Christ said to the person that wanted to be healed, lift up your mattress and walk. It was one of those moments where it was like it was time to heal, time to get better, and it wasn't left up to other people. It was my responsibility to do it.
Well, that's an enlightenment of sorts.
And so ever since then, I've been on an exploration. And every time I learned something, I went back to teach it to somebody. And so I've learned through teaching more than anything. And so that's really, when you mention all of these titles, these are all of the things that have attracted me through life, where I learned and where I had great teachers. I used to call myself the Humpty Dumpty of life because I've been put together by so many millions of people that have been so kind and so generous and so giving of their time, that have taken the time to nurture me.
That's a great image, and we are here to help others, but I need to go back to something you said, because this is just chock full of everything so far. What you said, you were depressed as a child. How? And I think we're only recently finding out that many children are depressed. I think we tend to think that depression is something that happens to adults. What's your earliest memory of being depressed?
Oh my God, I remember my life feeling like it was always twilight.
Really?
And the people that I felt that were there to protect me, two major things happened to me as a child. Number one, my father died when I was 5.
So your protector died?
My protector died, but also there was a maid in the house who was like a mother to me, who took me everywhere and was so proud of me. And then, of course, when there was no money anymore, and my father died, she was gone also.
Oh.
So there were things that people used to say, and children aren't conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I would hear adults say things, I would take that to heart.
Children do.
And take it literally.
Right, right.
And so I would hear phrases like, the good die young. And so for me being 5 years old, I was left with the not so good. And people that were really powerful, and where I had no sense of power or of strength. So I took the role as a victim. Now, the victim can be a very, very powerful role.
Why is that?
It took me a long time to learn about that, because the victim doesn't take responsibility for what happens to them, and they also think everybody else is guilty.
Yes.
So they punish the people around them very often by being the victim. Now, I'm not talking about people that are raped or people that are, really hurt and taken, I don't condone any of that.
Right.
But there gets to be a place in life where what I've learned for myself and what's worked for me, because today I have a very powerful, wonderful, beautiful, incredible, joyous, carefree, and free life. But what I've learned is that if there's a situation, there's something I need to learn from it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not powerless. It's not what happens to me that's so important. It's what I do with what happens to me.
Yeah.
So there are things that I've said that have been foolish. There are situations I've been in which have been unpleasant. But the question always is, what can I learn about this? How can I not be there again? You talk about jobs that I've had that are very successful kinds of jobs. I'm a counselor, and a successful counselor.
What kind of counselor are you?
I started out in the drug and alcohol field, and that was the first time I really loved learning.
Why?
Because I'm a recovering person.
Okay.
I have been recovering now for 37 years, and I needed to make sense of this in my life. And so very often we keep looking at the one thing, like there's a switch. Like, I was talking to someone just the other day, and they were telling me about the sadness in their life and how things were complicated. And so often in the beginning of therapy, we go looking for this switch, like if we had an answer here.
A magic switch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what happened. If we can pull this switch, everything is going to be the land of milk and honey.
And it's never true, is it?
It's not true.
It's like people say, if I only lost weight, if I only had a lot of money, if I only whatever.
Exactly so. And there is a time, you see, and this is absolutely what you just said now is the key. Because the switch is this. If there was a switch, this is the switch. And the switch is from looking out, saying, I wish I were there,
Right.
to knowing that everything you need is inside of you.
Okay, now, here's my question, again, but to reference something you said. Victims, feeling like a victim, and the powerless. How do you empower the powerless and the people who think they're powerless? I mean, there are people that are in this world, as we know, that are truly powerless.
Right.
Where do you start? This is a hard question. Where do you start?
I think the greatest gift we can give somebody else is the gift of seeing who they truly are.
How do we do that?
I think as a counselor, you see, this is one of the gifts that I've been given. This is why I'm a counselor. I know that I've been able to make this shift. The fact that I've been able to make this shift has let me understand I was a most unlikely person to make this shift. But the fact that I've been able to do it, I understand that people have the ability to do it. So I think the key for me as a counselor is that I know other people can do it too. If I can do it, they can do it. And I think we can't do it for them, but we can see it in them. I remember hearing a passionate priest years ago. You know how that there are those key things in life that opens doors for you? And I remember thinking I was really devoid of feeling. And wanting very much to, as I said, everything's about connection, wanting very much to feel connected because I really didn't feel anything. And I remember this passionate priest talking, and he said, wanting to love is loving. He said, wanting to care is caring. And it was like Thomas Merton that says, when you go looking for God, God's already found you.
Yes.
This understanding that you were on the road to that wanting to do something, that your soul is already finding the path to do it. So I think when people come to me and there's something that they want, I think my understanding that they already have it allows them to have it. One of my favorite people, and I'm always reading a book. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to see things from different perspectives. But one of my favorite Bibles, if you will, is Illusions by Richard Bach. And the things that he says in that book, I used to write on the bathroom mirror, so I would teach myself these things. I love it. And one of the things that he said in Illusions was, learning is allowing yourself to know what you already know. Doing is demonstrating that you know it. And teaching is allowing others to know that they know it too. And so that really is how people get empowered. By you stepping back and becoming a cheerleader. I think when there was a time I don't like pain. I definitely do not like pain. I always feel like I've done it.
Physical pain.
Any kind of pain. Okay. I've already done pain. I don't like it. But so when I first got into counseling, I didn't want people to be in pain. And I used to try and get them help before they asked for help, because I didn't want them to be hurt. I think we do that for our children, too.
I think so.
Yeah. We are so afraid that they're going to get hurt or walk into a wall. We want to stop that before they know the consequences of what they're doing.
So we don't let them go through it.
Exactly.
Right.
And success, as you know, and this sounds trite, but it's really true, success is standing up one more time than you fall down.
Oh, yes.
So that's the way you really build your muscle. You know, very often people come to me because I do a lot of substance abuse work. And people come to me and they're smoking marijuana, and we know that people begin to do drugs at turning points in their life because they don't know how to do the next step and they want to feel comfortable.
Wow.
So very often I say to these folks that have been afraid to go through a transition and they're taking some outside kind of drug to give them a good feeling, I tell them that taking drugs is like sending someone else to the gym for you.
I love it.
And you're sending somebody else to the gym to make you work out. Every time they come back from the gym, they're stronger and you're weaker because you haven't done your own exercise. You haven't learned how to work out. I think one of the problems today is we have sold people on the idea that they're supposed to be comfortable and life is not supposed to be harmful or hurtful. It's wonderful to feel pain sometimes. It's wonderful to be sad sometimes. It's wonderful to be joyous sometimes. And to embrace it all. It's all a part of living. And when you are in some kind of pain is there to tell you that there's something that's not in harmony. There's something that you need to change. There's something you need to think about differently. There's something that's out of kilter. And when we learn how to evolve through that, that's how we grow. That's how we develop. That's how we become emotionally and spiritually mature. When we want to just get rid of it and not go through it.
The other day when we met, it was very hot where we are in the Northeast. It was very hot that weekend. And we were talking about suffering through the heat. And we got on the subject of suffering. And you said, no one wants to suffer. And we have to suffer. But
and we were talking about, in this United States where we are, from the people we know, we were talking about when it's really hot, we put on the air conditioner.
Yes.
When it's cold, we put on the heater. We're always trying to change what it is that we're experiencing instead of experiencing what we're experiencing.
Well, I'm the first person to turn on the air conditioner, and
I'm the first person to turn on the heat.
See?
So we got it.
But then we got on the subject of narcotizing because we don't want to feel. Now, this is becoming, everything in the world is becoming available to people at a younger and younger age.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing stories from my daughter who works in substance abuse of 9-year-olds taking Xanax. Younger. Are they taking it by prescription, or some of them are taking it illegal?
There are so many drugs out there that are marketed or distributed, and we're not allowing people to develop their brains. I understand that we don't want to put people in jail for smoking a joint. I'm on board with that whole thing. On the other hand, I'm not on board with young people using marijuana because it does something to the brain and it stops people, again, from having their own experience and maturing. I know as an addict, when you stop using whatever it is you're using to escape living, because that's what it is, when you stop emotionally, you are at the age where you began using.
Wow.
Because you have not developed during that time.
Say that again, because this is critical. When you stop using,
you are emotionally where you were when you began using, because you have not learned coping skills. You see, this is the problem with the idea of treatment. Because treatment is really not stopping using a drug. Treatment is developing coping skills. Treatment is about helping you to mature Treatment is about giving you space and time to be able to think about things and letting your brain clear up a little bit. I remember once, as I said to you, anything I ever learned, I went back and taught or opened the door for other people. And I was working for a treatment center, because that's another thing I did on the way up. I used to market treatment because I really believed in it in my heart. I remember taking a 13-year-old and putting him in treatment. And I don't know, he'd probably been using since he was, 9 or 10 or something. But I remember I picked him up when he finished treatment, and I would, drive them places in my car. I'd drive them to treatment, drive them back. And I remember him looking at me with this wonderful smile on his face, this little angry kid that I had put in treatment. And he has this beatific smile on his face, and he said, "I never knew what my brain felt like."
Oh, my God.
And this is what I'm saying. This is about being alive, learning how to live. And this is back at the beginning of our discussion when I said to you, I'm not a natural. I had to learn how to do this. And I had to learn when I wasn't having a good day to make it better for myself.
So tell me why, again, going back, you said you were the least likely candidate to find your way.
I was depressed. I wasn't talking to other people. I didn't feel like I was a part of life.
How old were you at that point?
Probably about in my 30s.
That's a long way to go to feel that way.
Definitely. Definitely. But then, you hear one thing. I remember at that time, I'm not a youngster. I'm sober 37 years, which is a long time. Mm-hmm. But back in those days, there wasn't the help there is today.
Right.
At all. And I remember trying to check into Bellevue once. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have women that were alcoholics then. That was a man thing to do. Mm-hmm. And it was a moral thing to do. And so I remember trying to check into Bellevue, and the psychiatrist met with me for 2 hours. And they said to me, you have two choices here. You can either get yourself a career, which doesn't really work well when you don't know anything and you've never finished anything and you have just been fairly destitute for 30 some odd years. Or she said, you can marry somebody who can take care of you so that you can continue doing what you're doing. She said, but what you can't do is drop yourself off here in a basket like a kitten.
Wow.
But in the middle of that, when I finally got sober, the truth is, it's not somebody else's responsibility to get you better. At the time, I could have used a little direction, mind you. I could definitely have used some good guidance and some good counseling. I mean, that was a little, because I didn't know how to think about things. I didn't have any tools. I didn't have any resources. And that's really what treatment is about today. It's easy to take somebody and separate them from a drug, but unless you give them some tools and you give them some resources and you give them a path out and a hand up, they don't know where to go. They don't know how to go.
So your first profession was abuse counseling?
My first profession,
substance abuse?
Well, my first profession was being a waitress.
Okay.
And it kind of taught me how to go to work. And it also taught me that if I went to work for a few hours a day, it was a lot easier than trying to con people into supporting me. Right. Which took 24 hours a day.
Right. Oh, you're thinking about that all the time.
And gave me a little freedom. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that was my first profession. And then my second profession was I knew somebody that worked for doctors. So I went to school, and I went to school to be a medical assistant because I had no sense of who I was, and I had no sense of skills, and I had no sense of knew anything.
Well, here's what I find interesting about that. You went. There are 12 specialty public schools in New York. You went to one of them. You went to Hunter Elementary, the hardest school, one of the hardest schools to get into. So you surely.
But you see, all of this has to do with self-esteem.
Right.
I never felt like I belonged there.
Oh, wow.
I always felt like, why don't I go to a public school and be on the top of my class where I'm in this, where I'm this, in the bottom of my class here, and just, I never felt good about myself. And it wasn't anyone else's fault, and it wasn't anyone that really understood or knew how lost I felt. It's interesting because I had a mother who was very smart, and she always would say to me, I understand. And I always thought, she doesn't understand, she has no clue. But now as I got older and I got her age and I got more mature, she understood. Mm-hmm. She understood, and she tried to help me as best she could. And she got me counseling when I was 12, 13 years old. And finally, she sent me to boarding school. And I had a house father in boarding school who was so important to my life. And I asked him once when I had graduated school, I said, I knew I had come out of school with a sense of values and a sense of understanding.
For the first time? Okay.
Yeah. And a sense of being special and important that was so important. And I said to him, how did you do that? Because I understood that something had happened in my life that made me feel good about who I was. And he said to me, it needs to be somebody. This is getting back to the thing of how do you give people value. Mm-hmm. He said to me, it needs to be somebody outside the family that sees the goodness in you.
Wow. Because we can't accept it. We don't accept it from people close to us?
No, and I think sometimes, and I think this is why I believe so in counseling. I think it has to be sometimes somebody that has no agenda for us. Okay. Like very often, our parents love us, but they have this idea of how we're going to be successful. Mm-hmm. I was telling you before, yesterday I was doing a mentoring program in one of the high schools in New York, and it was like this fast dating. This was fast mentoring, where you had 10 minutes with kids that could ask you a question, and then everybody shifted tables and everything. And what was the question? Where did I go with this?
Do we have to get affirmation from someone outside the family?
Oh, yes. So I was saying to them, sometimes it's good to talk to someone outside of the family, because the people in our family absolutely love us. They want good for us, but they bring all their kind of fears and their kind of, this is the way they want it done. I think that's what happened with my mother and I, is, she always wanted good for me, but she wanted me to be successful her way.
And what way was that?
Well, she wanted me to go into the life insurance business because that was her business.
She was in the life insurance business?
My mother, my mother was a missionary in the field. My mother was a widow in 1948 with 2 children, and she went into a field where there were no women, mm-hmm. and there definitely weren't women with her background. She started out as a secretary and looked around and said, I can do this. And she became one of the leading women in the United States in life insurance. And there was not a policy that she would deliver to a man that she would not have their wives there, so that the wives would know about the economy of the family.
I love it.
Because she had been left as a widow and not known how little there was or how much there was. And this was back in the day where women didn't ever write a check.
Wow.
didn't ever know anything about anything to do with this. So she was a very powerful, she was just very wonderful. But I had to find my own path of excellence, like she had her path of excellence. And as I said, she always wanted good for me, and she was very bright, and she understood. But I had to do my own falling down and standing up.
But what you did in the way that your mom did was her work came out of her loss and her wanting to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. And you're doing the same kind of, in the same vein.
Absolutely.
Which is great. Now, tell me what a typical day is like for you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I get up and I play something to exercise my brain.
Like what?
Luminosity.
Okay.
Or something like that. And because I enjoy it. Well, actually, before that, I wake up thanking God for my life today, actually. And the fact that I've been given so much, and that my body parts work, and that the light is still there, and our planet is still safe, and that I'm alive, and I really offer that to God to use. That today I may be useful, and that's very important to me. That is the way I connect. That's the way I found that I connected.
Okay.
By being useful to others and myself, and to be used purposefully, and to treat myself and others with dignity. And then I play luminosity because that's fun. Gotta have a little fun. And then I like to get to work early. And then whatever it is in my book, and my day has a lot of diversity. I do work for an airline.
Okay.
In mental health, and I'm an employee assistance professional.
Say that again.
We've been all over the world today, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Within this conversation.
You're a what? Tell me your...
Employee assistance professional.
Okay.
So that means it's what it is organizational mental health, actually. And I work for a company where I do any kind of mental health issues, assessment, referral, some counseling, some training, a lot of trauma work for an airline. And so there's a lot of diversity in it. I love the fact that there's a lot of diversity in it. And it also gives me a chance to be creative and to be able to hear people and to use myself well in helping to open the door for people so that they can live a better life. Or at least, live a better moment, whatever it is, because many of them have really nice lives, but all of us could use a hand up every now and then.
So you would have from pilots to baggage handlers?
Absolutely.
You would see anybody that needs to see you,
right.
Your door is open? Is that
right?
Amazing.
Yeah. And then after that, I have a little private practice.
Okay, tell us about that.
I do a lot of what we call substance abuse professional work. So anyone that has worked under the Department of Transportation who has failed a drug test, my job is trying to get them back employed again by finding out about why they've used some kind of substance that would create a hazard for the public.
Finding why they would abuse it?
Yeah, because, we all do whatever we do for good reason.
Okay.
And so it becomes very important to know when somebody's using a substance, when somebody's avoiding something, it becomes very important to know why they thought that was a good reason to do that.
And what is the typical answer that you would get to something like, do they give very personal answers, or is there a general?
It's kind of interesting because a lot of people think that they're using drugs to help them go to sleep.
Oh.
But actually, the side effect of the drugs is what's keeping them up.
Okay.
Or a lot of people have a lot of anxiety, And they're using drugs to calm them down. And they need to learn to deal with the anxiety. A lot of people are depressed, and they think that it's, and they're drinking alcohol, which is a depressant. So very often people are using the thing that's keeping them chained and trying to break the chain. And so what happens is, we call it in mental health, they spiral down. I had a man once that called me, and he wanted me to give him, because we do a lot of referrals, he wanted me to give him a name of a psychiatrist in his area, because he was so depressed he could not get out of bed.
Oh, my goodness.
He just could not move in the morning. And so he wanted the name of a psychiatrist so he could go and get another pill so that he could get up in the morning and go to work. So I said to him, "What medication are you taking?" He said, "Well, I've had a back problem." So I went to a doctor who gave me Oxycontin for my back.
There you go.
And then the Oxycontin stopped working. So then they gave me Percocet with the Oxycontin. And then that stopped working. And then they gave him something else with the Oxycontin and the Percocet. So I said to him, "You know what?" I said, "Let me put you in treatment." I sent him to a rehab where there was a wonderful doctor there that just worked with people that were addicted to opiates.
Good.
And they pulled out the opiates, and he called me 2 weeks later from the place. They gave him physiotherapy. They taught him how to work with the little pain he had. But what he found out is all the drugs he was taking were magnifying the pain. And then what happens is, when you start going into withdrawal from the drugs, you don't know whether that was your pain in the first place or that was withdrawal symptoms. So you think you're in more pain. Anyway, they pulled out all the pain medication, and they gave him physiotherapy, and 2 weeks later he was feeling really good
2
and
weeks.
ready to go back to work again, because he had gotten all of that stuff out of his system. And he didn't realize that was why he couldn't get out of bed. If you would take all that stuff, you couldn't get out of bed either.
So, okay, now I've got a lot of questions. We're in the middle of an opioid epidemic.
Right.
Without a doubt. I'm going to back up a little bit more. How did we get to this age of anxiety? When did this happen? It's real. I see it. I see it with friends and loved ones. It's high anxiety. What is causing it? When is it the right time to medicate? Because I see a lot of that. And how do you know, no, you don't need to medicate, let's try other things?
I don't say don't ever use medicine. That's not the case. There are some people that need medicine for some things.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And there are some people that have a kind of depression where you don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, whether they didn't have the endorphins or the dopamine to feel okay, or whether they didn't feel okay and they stopped creating that dopamine and endorphins. So they need a replacement therapy.
What's that?
Where they replace it with an antidepressant.
Okay.
Or there are some people that absolutely cannot function because they are so anxious that you need to get them to a place where they can begin to function.
And how do you do that?
Very carefully with a really good doctor that knows how to really do that for somebody. It's not just somebody that has, had a marketer come into their office and said, this is the answer for everything.
Sure.
Okay. If there's a family history of that kind of thing, there's usually like a kind of drug that the family uses that the family responds to, because these kinds of things are genetic as well as being experiential. Okay, but there are all kinds of different depressions. So I don't want to diagnose, or I don't want to tell people what they can or cannot do. A combination of things usually works well for people. I usually tell people, if you need medication, you also need counseling.
Sure.
Because by the time you've experienced these things enough so that you need medication, you've created some turmoil around you in response to how you were feeling. And you need to know how to break out of that. You need...
To break the pattern.
Exactly so. That creates that.
And that's not easy. That's not easy.
And that's
either.
not easy. You know, I'm not saying any of this is easy. And again, we go back to there's no magic switch. There's putting one foot in front of the other and learning and growing and keeping moving. But I think when you said, what's the problem? You know, where's the original switch? I think, again, it goes back to this thing, which was my theme in life, was this need to connect.
Yes.
This need to connect, and this need to feel connection, and this need to feel valued. You know, as a minister, I sometimes I'm called to do baptisms. And what I say to the people when I'm doing a baptism, I say, you are the community that will show people what to look for in their life. You are the community that will show them God's love because you will show them love. You will be the community that shows them how to find people that value them because you value them. So that when they grow, they will know what to look for in life.
Yes.
You know, I remember a therapist saying to me once, in the middle of this darkness, when life looked so dark to me, he said, who loved you? So that you will know what to look for, that you will know that this was not good enough for you.
Wow.
And I go back to these people I lost because I was not mature enough to understand the love my mother had for me. But I go back to these people that I knew loved me. You see, and so I knew that there was that out there. And I wanted it. What I didn't know is I needed to learn how to receive things.
I hear this a lot. Why is that a common?
I tell my people, nobody needs to come to me for counseling after this because I'm telling you everything that people pay me to hear. But this is true, and it's free because we know it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you know, there are a million ideas out there every day. And the thing is, it's like a million footballs out there every day. And the million ideas, a million germs, a million everything. Why do we receive some and not others?
Why?
People say a million dopey things out there every day, and you say that's dopey. But somebody says something about, you know, you really are unattractive. And if you have a really unattractive receptor,
Okay.
you catch that ball.
Out of all the balls.
Out of all the balls going by, 18 people can say you have a beautiful face,
Wow.
and somebody pops up and says, yeah, but, you know, she's not so hot. And you grab onto she's not so hot. So it depends what you want to receive, what you have a receptor for, what you hear in life. You know, I really believe that we live in paradise.
Okay.
And one of my greatest metaphors is we're in the Garden of Eden. We live in paradise. We're happy. We're eating all this fruit. We're friends with all the animals. We even like the snakes. They talk to us. And then one day we decide we take this fruit of the decision between good and evil. Before this, we don't know anything about good and evil. We just know it's all pretty and it's all for our greater good. So we take this fruit that now we decide some things are good and some things are not so hot. And what's not so hot? Us. And now we're hiding behind a bush so no one should see us. So what was the difference between the day that everything was wonderful and the day that we decided we were not so hot? The decision was in our head. The decision was in our head. And so if we will change that thinking error, what we call in psychology a thinking error, and go back to deciding how we want to use what we thought was good and what was bad, how we want to use it all for good, how we want to use it all to grow, how we want it just to be an experience and not a gaping scar.
So what?
Then we live in paradise.
If only. I mean, it's a long road to get there for some. It's a long road.
That's right.
So what was your road? What was the thing that made you decide, I want to live in paradise. I don't want to live in this black hole anymore? Was there a switch for you?
You know, it's funny because this came up the other day. You know, there were so many switches. There were so many, this understanding that everything happens for my greater good. Whatever I hear, whatever happens, whatever it is a stepping stone for me, is one of my core concepts.
Okay.
And years ago, there used to be this woman on television. You know, the voices are all around. You know, the spirit is all around us. It depends what we're open to. But I remember in my desperation, there was a woman by the name of Catherine Coleman. She was an evangelist on the television. And I remember hearing a voice saying, I believe in miracles. And I believe in miracles. And I remember just having that voice permeate in me. And I remember my earliest prayers when I was really still so screwed up. I remember my prayer was, fix this.
Really?
Fix this. It was that simple. Because I believed that I could be healed. And I believe we all can be healed if we allow it. But I came a long way from that prayer. But it's a good thing for me to remember because I was so broken. And so sometimes we have to be broken in order to let that light come and penetrate us and to start that healing process. You know, at the beginning, very often people say, you know, it's a great deal of pain that sets you on the road. But after a while, it's not the pain that keeps you on that road. After a while, as you begin healing, that health becomes the thing that you're drawn to.
Right.
Not the pain that you're afraid of. So I think the big difference between a day that's comfortable and joyous and free and a day that isn't is beginning the day and living the day and appreciating everything that happens to you, everything in your life. Learning what it is that you need to change when there's something that you thought was less than worthy of you. And we all do things that we think are less than worthy of us, or most of us do. I do. And saying, well, tomorrow I can make this change, I can make this shift. But what we want to do is essentially be in connection between what's in our heart and what's in our brain.
Yes.
So that at the end of the day, we respect ourselves. And so we have to make choices during the day of, is this in harmony with what I believe, or is this not in harmony with what I believe? And to live a day that you feel that you have valued yourself. And then you stop wanting all the outside things, or wanting to be like this, or wanting to be like that. Because if you really want to be like this or that, learn how to do it. You have the capability.
And be connected to that. And the word that keeps coming up here is connection.
Absolutely. That's the word, that's connection. When you're connected to yourself,
You can be connected to others.
you're connected to everything because you understand that, the overtones of my being a minister here. But really, it's in the first commandment that says we're all one.
Wow.
And if we're all one, you can't have one in something else. But the thing that makes the difference in the oneness is the understanding of that. The understanding that we are definitely all one and that we have great impact on each other and that it's our responsibility. I'll tell you one fast story.
Go ahead.
Years ago, I was doing a wedding up in Port Jervis. This is, every now and then you get these little sparkles of life, and this is one of them. I was doing a wedding in Port Jervis, and I'm crossing the street, and there's a good New York term that says schlepping. I am schlepping a microphone and a stand and a this and a that, and I'm crossing the street, and a couple is crossing the street with me. And so I'm carrying all this stuff, and I go over there and I do the wedding. And after the wedding, I am taking all this stuff back across the street, and this same couple is crossing with me. And the man said to me, "If we knew you were the Reverend, we would have helped you with that."
Oh my goodness!
But I thought, you know what? This is what my ministry is about. My ministry is about knowing, A, that I'm Reverend, and knowing that so is everybody else.
Yes.
And so do not put anyone on a pedestal. We're all in this together, trying to do the best we can on a daily basis. And if it's not working for us, it's our responsibility to find out why and to make that correction, because it's all there for us if we're willing to be open and learn and sometimes change our mind about the way we think about things.
Hard thing to unlearn, old habits, but that's what you do, unlearn old habits and show people new ways and set them in the right direction. Mm-hmm. There was a famous experiment talking about connection and community called Rat Park. They put rats in a tank. Well, it was a very big, it was huge. It was huge. And no, first they put the rat in there alone. And there were 2 bottles, water and water with cocaine in it.
Ah.
And when the rat who was alone kept going to the cocaine, he had no one to connect. Then they put other rats in. And when there were lots of rats, and they called it Rat Park, they didn't want the cocaine anymore. They were going to the water because they were connecting.
Really?
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Mm-hmm. And it blew me away to hear this, because if anyone doubts that isolation, among other reasons, but isolation, feeling isolated and lost and alone, causes addiction. Think again. Look at this experiment.
Well, addiction, the great rat experiment for addiction, is they had 3 sets of rats. Mm-hmm. And one set of rats, they pressed a bar, and every time they pressed a bar, they got a pellet.
Okay.
And they were very happy little rats, and they just spent all day doing rat things. And appropriately, when they were hungry, they pressed and got a pellet and lived happy little rat lives. And then there was a second group that every time they pressed a bar, they got a pain, they got a shock. Mm-hmm. And so they learned very quickly,
don't press
that bar, right? But they also got very skinny and died, but they knew not to press that bar and get a shock. There was a third set of rats, and sometimes when they pressed the bar, they got a pellet. And sometimes when they pressed the bar, they got nothing. And sometimes when they pressed the bar, they got a shock. And that set of rats press that bar faster and faster and faster, because they never knew when they would get a reward. They never knew when they would get a shock. They never knew when they would get nothing. And they pressed it faster and faster. And that's all they did all day, is press that bar, thinking, maybe next time I'll get the pellet. Maybe next time I'll get the pellet.
Right.
And those were the rats that became addicted. So if you are pressing that bar, and sometimes getting a shock and sometimes getting nothing, go talk to someone else about it. Because don't go to an empty well for water.
Right.
And decide how much pain you want in your life. Decide how much nothing you want in life. And learn how it is to function on your own, to learn how to get the joy of living, which is all around you, which you probably don't have to press a bar for at all.
So tell me about being a minister. Tell me, how did all that come?
Oh, my goodness. I've always known I needed to be a minister. You know, and it's so interesting, because being this lonely little kid when I was a little kid, and always wanted to connect and always wanted to have some sense of a family, the first family that I went looking for was God. I mean, what other 11-year-old begins a conversion experience? I mean, looking for some way to connect and just feeling out there alone. So religion was something was on my mind since I was a child.
But you went to a public school. You didn't go to any. So where did the notion of religion or God come from? And was it talked about in your house? Where'd you get this?
There was some talk of religion in my house, but my mother would walk around saying, "Oh my God, what did I do to deserve this?" And so that was a terrible notion of God. And then also, I guess I had heard some prayer about, God and my father now, who was gone, that God could see you all the time.
Right.
So going back to that terrible cognitive stuff, I thought I was being watched all the time.
By your father or by God?
Both of them. And I was really scared all the time and had no sense of privacy. But I went looking for the absolute right. I'm going to do this right, and then I'll be okay. So that was my first being a child thing that was important to me. I wanted something that was really concrete. And I wanted something that was the truth, which is really interesting, because every path I tried was exactly the path I needed at the moment. I had so many people on so many paths that were so good to me, that listened to me, that heard me, that cared about me, that helped to nurture me and helped to... but I always needed to be a priest. I knew that.
Wow.
But I think, and interestingly, after I got sober and after I was in treatment, I met a woman who was a priest. And I really think I wanted to be a priest so I would be separate from people, so that I would be special.
Okay.
And what being a minister really taught me is that I was one of the people, and that I was crying with the people, and I was praying with the people, and I was just another voice with the people, and I was one of the people. So there was no pedestal, and there was no separation. But everybody has to get to where they're going by their own little road.
Oh, yes.
And what a relaxation, what what a wonderful thing to find out you're a part of a great wheel, a great cosmic wheel, and that you don't have to carry the whole thing, and that you don't have to be the whole thing, and that you can relax and take a breath. I think, in this need to control so much, and in this need to know everything, and in this need to make everything happen, what happens eventually is you fall on your butt. Mm-hmm. And then you find that life sustains you, and you don't need to know the answer anymore. You just need to sit back and relax and appreciate it. So we all come full circle sometime, someplace, some moment.
We hope. Again, this would be my wish for everyone, and I know that this would be your wish for everyone, that we all come around
and feel that peace. That peace. What did they say? That peace that is further than all understanding. That peace that you allow to permeate you instead of you thinking you need to create it. That it really is there for you if you will just be still. I think that was one of the things that carried me a long time, that sense of be still and know that I am God. Be still. That sense that you are being led, that you will hear, that the balls you catch are all the right ball, but you don't have to. You can enjoy it and put it down and get another ball. That there's not just one thing. There's lots of balls out there.
So can people get in touch with you either for your ministry services or?
Yeah, we had a church here for about 15 years that was really great. It was a home church. And, now, people can certainly get in touch with me. Do you want my phone number?
Is there a website? Is there an email? What would be the best way? I have a website.
It's www.spiritualsearch.org.
www.spiritualsearch.org is how to get in touch with Ellyn Kravette.
Yeah.
Or
you can email me.
Okay.
At Ellyn, ELLYN, .Kravette, KRAV as in Victor, ETTE, @gmail.com.
And you're available for psychotherapy, for drug counseling?
For counseling.
Okay.
For what I call is psycho-spiritual counseling.
I like that.
Yeah. And so, I'm available to chat with people and to be helpful in any way that I can.
Do you do phone sessions?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
So we have to come to you.
You have to come to me.
Okay.
I think it's really important to see people and to hear people and to be with people. Mm-hmm. And it's just simply the way I work. Other people work other ways. And everybody, there are so many varieties out there because there are so many varieties of people. So you have to find what it is that works for you.
Okay. And if they want to get in touch with you for services, for their celebrations, for wedding, baptism, same way through that email?
Oh, please, yes. Okay. I love to celebrate with people. So,
right. And do you travel or do you stay? We're here in the...
I travel. I usually work, in the tri-state area.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been a psycho-spiritual experience for me today. I feel lighter than when I came in here. I honestly do. I feel fabulous now.
I'm so glad.
And thank you for sharing this with me and with everybody else.
Yes, thanks for asking. I'm just so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for all the wonderful people in my life, and you're definitely one of them and have been there for a long time. And you're a joy yourself. One day I'm going to sit sit on that side of the microphone and interview you because you are some special lady.
That
so
would be fun. I would love that.
let's do it.
All right. So tune back soon. We don't know when, but that's going to happen. Keep listening, everybody. Thank you for listening to It's Your Thing. Again, Ellyn Kravette.
Perfect.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.